This video shows different shading techniques for the objects seen. These are sketches that are done only, they're not finished objects, but what you can do is utilize any tips from the video to help you to improve yours. Many different objects and different shapes are shown in this video, so please try to watch it through because at different times different techniques are done and different objects are done. So try to watch through all of it. You can speed it up or slow it down. It's really up to you. These pencils and the blade that is here, those are the tools we're using. Now this first technique I'm showing is just pointillism, which is dots. You're not dragging the pencil across the paper, you're just making small dots to show the detail. So depending on where you want those darks to be, you have the dots more concentrated. And where the lights are, you just have them spread a bit more. This is a good technique for the block, and I would suggest using it along with the other little shapes that we practiced before. So placing the dots, we're going to do two types. The first one is a bit more concentrated to show the dark areas, but with this one, we're imagining that this is the edge of the block, and these small little dots, as I said, it's called pointillism. We are mainly using those for the block. These small fine dots that I'm doing in this second piece, you want to have a mixture of both of them. You're trying to use not the side of the pencil, but just the point of it. So you need a very sharp point, and you need to practice it beforehand. Now, even though it looks here like I'm shading, I'm still using dots there to highlight that dark side. We're going to switch now to another technique, which is a type of cross hatching, where you have lines like X's. I would probably not suggest this be used for the block or any of the other objects in the exam, but it's another technique which can show detail and it can show texture. If you like it, practice it, and you can decide where you want to use it, how you can use it. The good thing about it is it makes a really nice edge, and even though you're just using X's, you can get some nice details from those X's. We're going to shade the concrete block next. Remember the details from before. So when we go into drawing the block, remember to use a piece of paper to kind of guide the sides of it. You want to make sure that it is not offset or oblong, as we say. So that little paper can just guide the side. In drawing the little squiggles in the block, small little shapes, ovals, lines, just irregular shapes, and you're remembering to try to keep the edge rough. It is a rough figure, so it needs to look rough. So these are very small little circles and shapes we're putting in, very light at the beginning, and you need to identify your dark areas first, as we went through in class. And I'm just highlighting those a little darker. This pencil that I'm using is, I think it's a 4B, and just punching in some of those dark areas to try to show that this area is actually dark as opposed to the other. So remember from earlier with the dots that we were using, you should use a mixture of those dots and this design here. Just using the Q-tip to kind of blend and give me some of those tones in the darker areas of the block. Beginning to use some charcoal to highlight the real dark areas, the shadows. So on the inside of the block, in there will be very dark because you will have the shadow. So one of the things I'm doing is trying to use the charcoal to make the edge, make that rough edge, instead of having all of the lines like solid. So even in the darker area, just trying to get some of the charcoal down there and just using the Q-tip to blend and show the lighter area on the inside of the block and also the outside. Reminder, this is still incomplete, it's still a sketch. What you need to do is to add those small dots from the beginning of this video to really show those finite, very small details. So just the tip of the pencil, once all of this detail is in, and just add some very, very small dots. Here, I trying to make the background using the charcoal because you want to make sure that you have a nice background that brings out the block. It isn't done perfectly, but it's not bad. Where that black background, that charcoal background hits the block should be a very clean line. So the thing that would have made it better is if I left the edge of the block light and just use the charcoal to make that edge. So just putting a bit of shadow and highlighting some more areas. It really is a very long process, but you just take your time. You have a lot of hours in this exam, and for those hours, you need to put in a lot of detail. So we'll just switch to the hammer. When you're drawing the hammer, try to make sure that you have like a T, so that the long part of the T is like the handle of the hammer. You need to make sure the head of the hammer is perpendicular, so it's at a right angle. And those are that's the makeup of the hammer that actually makes it look kind of like a hammer. So before you draw this hammer, make sure you draw your T. So that T shows you where's the top of the hammer, where's the head. It shows you where's the bottom of the handle going to go. So even the way I have this at this point is a little stubby. So what this has helped me to do, doing the T, it has helped me to realize that it's a bit stubby, so I extended the bottom a little more. So you need to make sure this is done for every figure, every shape. In shading, you want to make sure that the metallic part has that shine. So there's a bit of a dash technique that I'm using here. I am doing it in some other parts of the video. So please try to make sure you watch the whole video just to get or understand those different techniques. You can speed it up or even slow it down because I have it sped up right now. And you can slow it down to see the details, a bit closer. For the handle, I want to make sure that these parts that I'm highlighting here are left white. So I'm just using dashes. Dashes as we come down the middle, which is pretty dark, and the left side of those dashes, I'm making them really dark. So that you have two tones here already, a really dark and then a medium. The top and the bottom of each dash, where they meet that white line, I make those dark as well. Then the left side, just some lighter grayish looking dashes. So basically just dashing, leaving white spaces for where that handle grip is. And on the right side, charcoal, you need a very sharp point. And if you realize I am curving the edge of these little rectangular things that I'm doing to show that grip. And that is a feature that you really need to bring out. Not only texture, but also the shape of the grip. And it will make it look a bit more realistic and a little better. Q-tip or blend stump, just to pull the tones together. Always make sure you have white, light, medium, and dark. The head, the hammer, once again a metallic portion. So just trying to make those dark shadows, and as the camera will focus, you will see I'm just going to use the pencil and the Q-tip to pull those tones together. Once again, I use a lot of dashes because the dashes can give that resemblance of shine and also a very smooth, clean edge. There's a lot more shading that could be done on the hammer, and as we said, you have 6 hours. So just make sure you punch in that detail to really bring these different parts to life. So I'm going to wrap over the hammer shortly. Here you can see some of the details. Remember, you have the time to make even more detail and improve this. So I'm here onto the mini snips. I don't think I recorded the beginning of this, but we're going to look at the shape, the drawing of it. So the first finger here, these two are showing the bottom of the figure. You want to make sure that this is symmetrical. Try to make it even on both sides. Even though it is drawn at a slant, you want to try to make sure that you have the curves correct and the shape of it correct. So that will get you the marks. From here, we're going to take a look at the dashes on the same left side by the finger that's there pointing. These are just small dashes to give that effect of shine. There are different ways that we can do this, obviously, having a smooth shading or the dashes. So remember, for this video, we're using several different techniques. On the edge here, I'm just highlighting the dark area, and I'm trying to make a white line once we begin to shade it. At the end of this edge, I'm just trying to keep that rough shading from the dashes so that it gives the impression that those dashes even come to the dark area. Even here, I'm not going over the full dash from the beginning. I'm just going over the left side. And this is something that we did from the hammer. Always remember to leave in some white, even on these objects in the still life. The top of this snips is a bit rusty. So go back to the block, think of the dots, pointillism, try to show shine, try to show dark, and try to show some of that rust by making dots and little squiggles on the top of it. So we're gonna go to the scraper. Most of the detail that is done on the scraper is dependent on the shape of it. To try to make it symmetrical, once again, try to use those lines. You can use the paper to help you to identify and make sure that the left side of it is the same size as the right. Remember that depending on the angle, it can look a bit skewed. So this is just a rough sketch of the scraper that I'm doing. Not as much detail as the one we're using for the exam. To start, I just want some gray tones on that metallic piece. So I'm just shading lightly, trying not to cut the paper with a pencil. And I just want this to be smooth. Now the paper that I'm using is not the best for shading. This is actually watercolor paper. But the tones, they're not coming out bad on it. So over here, just the dark side. That's not charcoal. I think that's a 6B that I'm using. And the whole thing here is to just blend the two so you can bring out some of that shine, some of that edge. A type of different technique is used for the top of this handle. Sometimes for these rubber handles, you can see like a grip portion, or you can just see shadows. So I just did that as if I could see shadows. And this side here, the edge, I've tried to make the right edge there light because I want to do the background there in charcoal. So still haven't used any charcoal as yet. As said several times before, you need to punch in the different tones. Really try to show the grays and the darks. So here I'm just putting in some light dashes. What those dashes can do is they just bring a shine forward. And if you do use the Q-tip afterwards, it can help. So on this right edge, you just want to use the charcoal to make this right side of the scraper. So you realize that there was no outline on the bottom, but we use the charcoal to make that outline for the right side. Alright, so at this point in the video, we are going to just move to some irregular shapes to show different techniques of shading. This one is a mixture of dashes, but I'm using the charcoal only. So the reason that I've done this is really just to bring out some gray tones. Type of a smooth type of gray tone with a white shine. Remember, you can slow down the video. So with this one, I'm going to try to make an edge using the dashes. And just angling those two dashes different directions, it can give you the sense of having an edge or corner. I'm not sure if this one will be used for the items we have, but this is just squiggles. You try to have some dark areas and you can try to blend them together. They give a deep sense of tone. Here are some examples of how we can do the hammer, how we can do the metallic objects. Some of these details are seen already for the tools in the video, but here along these rectangles, I'm just gonna try to punch them in. Remember, it is not just putting in the 3 tones or the 4 tones, but the intensity of them. So basically the value, you want to make sure they're very rich where they should be, and you have blends. So I'm using the charcoal only for this one, even though it is a little blurry. You can use the Q-tip if you want to bring some of those tones across to just give you a gray without even shading all of the object. This one is just using dashes and lines to give the sense of a shape. So it's not a bee that I'm drawing, but it's an object that you want to show that it has some tone on the edge. And I just put the shading in the style or in the shape of that bee. Similarly here, if I want to put some circular shadows on the object, just draw any curves and show different tones. Go from dark to the medium and just try to blend them together. So these can be spots on the metallic object. If you have water on the object, anything like that can be done using this. With this one, we have here the handle. So this is more for like a wooden handle, and it's cross-hatching once again. We did this at the beginning of the video with a box. It's a very, very nice detail to use once you are able to get it done right. And you go from white, medium, to very, very dark. So it's basically these curved X's to give the shape of that handle some life. If this is the hammer or even a metal tube, these little dashes, once again in the curve form, they follow the edge of the object and they can give you that texture again. So as we come to the end of the video, remember it's just to show different techniques that we can use for these objects, but it's ultimately up to you which ones you want to use, and then practice, and you can use them on the fly.